We recently sat down with Sarah Ashton-Cirillo. She's a transgender American who first went to Ukraine in early 2022 as a journalist, but then joined that country's military, fighting on the front line and serving as a combat medic. After being injured herself, she went on to become an official spokesperson for Ukraine's territorial defense forces, hosting for them an online show called Russia Hates the Truth.
The Russian war criminals and terrorists continue to fail at everything, on their way to a transformative and total defeat, one which will end in the collapse of Russia as the world has known it.
Ashton-Cirillo came to Washington earlier this month in her new capacity as an advisor to a general in Ukraine's army to promote the country's focus on democratic values and reforms. While here, she sat down with Scripps News, out of uniform and without her trademark wig. Here now is the part of our conversation focusing on where she thinks this conflict is headed. You're an insider.
I guess you could go ahead and apply any label to me. Many people have spent 22 months applying labels to me.
Well, but you're working with people that are at pretty high levels in the military.
I would say that. I'm an advisor to a 2-star general.
What's it look like on the inside right now in terms of just how they feel things are going? There's got to be some disappointment.
President Zelensky has made clear what our expectations are, and our expectations and our plans. When those plans are put into action on the battlefield, the world will see what they are. We have 1 million people fighting for liberty and liberation, Jason.
A lot of them have been there since day one. They're tired.
They are tired. However, a very specific example. Right before I came to the United States, I was at the front lines in an area you've visited, Zaporizhia, speaking with some of the heroic fighters of the 128th Brigade's Mountain Assault. Every single soldier I spoke to said, "We are ready to fight until we've returned the country to its 1991 borders." And so our troops are exhausted and frustrated, not because of their mission. They're exhausted and frustrated because of Vladimir Putin's animalistic and barbaric actions.
The Russians have a much more vast reservoir of people that they can enlist and send to the front lines.
Absolutely. Russia has an unlimited supply of people that they can send at us. What I can tell you is we are taking a very methodical approach towards liberating the country. And in doing so, we've put human life ahead of territorial gain.
Here's where I'm going with this. General Zaluzny, he just wrote in The Economist not that long ago that this is a war of attrition.
Mm-hmm.
In a war of attrition, the Russians, they've got more people that they can and are willing to put into the fight than the Ukrainians are. So how does Ukraine win this?
We're going to win it through some of the methods that General Zaluzny mentioned. And let's get back to some statistic. Not just high tech, better planning on the battlefield. Through technology, through new planning, through understanding the Russian methods of what they're trying to do through this war of attrition, we will win this war. Ukraine will be liberated.
Ukraine's liberation of Russian-held territory in 2023 fell far short of the Pentagon's hopes. According to a recent Pew survey, nearly half of Republicans now think America is doing too much for Ukraine. At the start of Russia's invasion, far fewer felt that way. How are they wrong?
What they need to understand is that while the Ukrainian people, the Ukrainian government, realize that America needs to be concerned about what's happening in America, specifically some of these questions over border, some of the questions over inflation.
Let's not talk about the politics of this. Let's talk about the very question of this is a grinding war that has no end in sight. We're throwing good money after bad.
Wrong. It's money being invested with a return on that investment. That's the highest in foreign policy.
10 miles is all Ukraine has managed to get this year with all of the billions of dollars of equipment that's been sent in.
Summer of 2024, it's going to be explosive out there. And it's going to be the Russians that are exploding.
What do you mean?
Well, I don't expect the Kerch Bridge to be standing in the summer of 2024.
This past July, a Ukrainian attack on the Kerch Bridge using an experimental sea drone damaged the 12-mile span that links Crimea to Russia. Moscow ordered it repaired quickly. Destroying this vital artery for Russian military equipment remains a key Ukrainian objective. You've told me the hope, not the plan.
Well, I'm not going to speak about operational security. We have 95% of the Western weapons still in stock, ready for 2024.
Russian pummeled Bradley fighting vehicles supplied by the U.S., ditched in Russian minefields, remain an enduring image of Ukrainian hopes dashed early on in the counteroffensive. After that, the country's military leaders took pains to protect their highest value NATO equipment. Ukraine's most pressing problem now: Russia's advantage when it comes to artillery shells and Iranian-supplied Shahed suicide drones.
Any country that's relying on the theocracy in Iran, that's relying on the dictatorship in North Korea, is a country that not only is failing and losing, but it's one that doesn't even deserve to be spoken of within the global community as being any sort of power.
Hold on. Iran, North Korea, yeah, they're getting weapons from them, but they're also building their own. They have ramped up, the Russians have ramped up their military-industrial complex, and they are producing shells far faster than the West can do that.
Their allies are producing shells. We are also, in Ukraine, ramping up our domestic production of weaponry, of high-tech solutions. There is no ceiling to what the Ukrainian ingenuity, technological advances, and know-how can do. 2024 is going to be a dynamic change point for the continent of Europe, because that is going to be the year when Russia is brought to its knees and pushed back.
I think a lot of these 48% of Republicans and Republican leading independents that Pew says are against more funding, they wouldn't find that very plausible.
The world has been counting out Ukraine since February 24th, 2022.
Correct.
It's a fallacy to continue to count out Ukraine. And this is not a movie.
What if there are no more American weapons and no more American money coming Ukraine's way?
We have rifles. We have heart. And we know the Russian enemy. So ultimately, it's up to the Americans to decide, do they want to support their partner, Ukraine, or do they want to go ahead and allow this opportunity to fatally and forever destroy a nemesis, Russia, without spilling any American blood on the soil beyond those of us who have volunteered to serve under Ukraine?
Some bold predictions for 2024, and we'll be there on the ground to see how it all unfolds. Jason Bellini, Scripps News, Washington.